We're going to do a couple of activities. This first one is based on the idea that sometimes anxiety doesn't show up in a clear facial expression. It doesn't necessarily always look a certain way. Sometimes it does, but often it doesn't. And so here we're going to have a little example of one of our favorite animated characters, Snowball. And I'm going to show you 6 different pictures. Again, if you're with somebody on the screen, you can talk about it. If you're there by yourself, you can just take a look. I won't be able to get any feedback from you, but I'm going to show you these 6 pictures. And I want you to ask yourself, you wonder, like, say, which one of Snowball's faces here is showing us that he's having anxiety? Could it be one particular face that shows that he's got anxiety? Could it be all of the facial expressions? And what other emotions might we see as we look through these? So I'll put them up slowly, one at a time, so we don't rush ahead of ourselves. I love these pictures. So for me, I can recognize that some emotions in Snowball, they kind of look like worry, maybe some sadness. I see some fear, definitely see some anger down there. There could be some frustration and maybe even some jealousy. Fear is most often an emotion that underlies many of the other emotions that we feel. And fear causes anxiety. So if we recognize what anxiety feels like for us, that's an important piece in helping ourselves. And it helps us understand what we're feeling. And it also helps us to better know how to manage that feeling and then use some of those strategies that Courtney mentioned that we can consider to use to work through how we're feeling. All right. We are going to do 2 activities. I'm going to lead you in the first. Courtney will lead you through the second. So this first activity kind of helps identify what anxiety feels like for you and where you feel it in your body. And again, this is helpful because as you become aware of those feelings and those sensations coming on, you'll recognize that you're starting to feel anxious. And if you can recognize when that's starting to happen, then maybe you'll have the time to provide yourself with some comfort or some safety to help prevent the anxiety from getting too big. What you see in front of you on the left is what they call a medical heat map. And it measures where certain people felt an emotion in their body. So we can see anxiety, love, depression, and contempt. Now, it's essentially a fancy temperature reading, but it's showing essentially where the blood flow is happening in the body. And so you can see love flows freely everywhere. But from that first video that we looked at, we saw that a lot of the ways that we're wired are based on sort of the evolution of human beings and how we respond to our environment. And so sometimes that fight or flight response, we can see the anxiety piece. All of the blood and the heat is focused on the core of our body and the head, probably because we're getting ready to keep ourselves safe. Love's everywhere. Depression, interestingly, just like it sounds, if you've ever had a really bad day, or maybe you've struggled with depression, you know those feelings of being low and being just kind of disconnected. Sometimes people actually say when they're depressed, they feel chilly, and it's a really hard feeling to kind of get warm and comfortable. And so interestingly enough, there's not a lot of blood flow happening when we're physically depressed. And contempt, for the younger crowd, that's a fancy way of saying, if somebody has wronged you and you feel really angry at that person. So we can see that the heat and the blood flow is focused at the head and the hands. Now, what's interesting about this is that feelings actually do show up in our body. And from a medical perspective, from these examples, this is what those emotions look like on that heat map. So this coloring body scan activity helps us notice those feelings that we feel inside of our body. And my question to you is, what does anxiety feel like for you? Where is it in your body? Is it a color? Is it a shape? Is it a pattern or a texture or a size or a temperature? Now, once this webinar is closed for the day, you'll be receiving a document that's got some of these activities included. And when you do, I'd encourage you to maybe use that body outline that's there and start to jot down different ways that you feel those body feelings by drawing or coloring or doing things to kind of change the paper to show how that would happen for you. There's no wrong answers. There's no wrong way to do this. Maybe it's a bunch of squiggles. Maybe you're kind of wrinkling the paper. I've seen this done so many different ways, but it's a really neat way to start to think about how we feel that anxiety in our body. So again, we can identify when that's starting to happen in our body, we can start to look for some of those strategies to help.
Thank you. And again, just to touch on what Josh was saying, there's no right or wrong answer for the body outline. And just because the medical heat map showed certain colors for certain emotions, that doesn't mean that's the same for you. We have had clients and students who have done this activity who used purple to mean love, or who have used a rectangular box across the chest to show anxiety, or who used all kinds of X's down a leg to show stress, big circles all around the hands and feet to show fear. So, I mean, it's completely different for every single person. And the activity is to let you create your own legend to decide what those things mean for you and what it could look like. Yeah. So the next activity we have is called the circle of control. And this activity, we again encourage you to print out the one that's on the right. You'll get a little tiny corner example of the colored poster. But the empty diagram is for you to fill out, and sometimes having something tangible to work on as a worksheet or an activity can be useful. So circle of control is a very logical, real way of figuring out in a situation that occurs that triggers anxiety, or you know is causing anxiety or is going to cause it, looking at what are the things about that situation that are in your control and what are the things that are out of your control. There's that other sphere on the outside, which is sometimes things that you might have influence on. You don't need to fill that one out to start with, certainly. Generally, the circle of control, we just work with the first two circles, but in case you want to move to that, you can. So an example for this would maybe be if going to see a new doctor or a new specialist appointment, and you're so tired of going to see doctors and it creates anxiety. What are they going to say? Now what? And you know that that's an upcoming appointment. Actually looking at this activity and going, okay, I know the appointment's going to happen and that is causing anxiety for me. What are the things about that leading up to that are in your control, that you have a degree of control over to help yourself, to support yourself, to make a choice or a decision about? What are those things? And then what are the things that are outside of your control regarding that? Well, it's outside of your control what they might say, but it might be inside your control of how you're going to respond to that. It might be outside of your control how their attitude is. Sometimes doctors and medical people's attitude can even cause anxiety for us. But it can be in your control what your attitude is going into the appointment, and knowing that you are not responsible for that person's attitude. And so you can go in and you can go out and leave that and let that go. And so looking at this activity, what's in my control, what is out of my control? Sometimes tangibly, actionably writing that down then gives you an idea of what you could do to support yourself in going into situations that create anxiety or that have caused anxiety and they're kind of ongoing. And if you maybe do some breathing and do some mindfulness, you could get to a little bit of a settled state to think about this activity and then go, oh, what can I do for myself to help myself settle, to help myself feel a little bit better? We're not talking about taking anxiety when it's like this big and telling you that there is a quick fix to make it absolutely gone. That's most likely not the case. But it can be in your control, and certainly over time, to figure out ways that help you reduce the anxiety. that help you reduce the intensity or the length of time that it's going on for you. And so our hope is that these activities are going to support you with a tangible way of how to communicate what's going on for you around anxiety. With the coloring body scan, what does anxiety look like for you in your body? Where is it? Sometimes putting that down can then help you communicate that to a loved one or to a safe person. Working through the circle of control can help give you a little bit of hands-on idea for yourself of what you can do, because what can you control and what do you need to let go of in this? And how can you do that in as calm a possible way for yourself? So hopefully these activities will be supportive. We encourage you to give them a try, use them, print them out as many times as you need, and yeah, we're hopeful that some of the information that we have talked about today is going to give you some ideas and tips around how to understand if you're having stress or anxiety, around what the symptoms are for you, what the triggers are for you, and then what are some strategies that will work for you.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that it's normal for everyone to feel stress and some anxiety in their lives. But when that anxiety becomes too overwhelming, or if it occurs too often, then there's supports that you can reach out for, and there's some strategies that you can use. And we've only touched on so few in this session to just kind of introduce people to the opportunities that are there. But I hope this was a worthwhile session for everyone that's listened. We really want to thank the Rare Disease community and the Rare Disease Foundation for hosting this mental health education webinar series. We're so honored to be a part of the RDF community of support.